Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning, John Cash, Chicago Tribune columnist, and the CHAZ/CHOP in Seattle is no more, but the autonomous zones are springing up elsewhere. There's a new CHAZ in NYC, City Hall Autonomous Zone. And to give you a smattering of the enlightenment that is present from those who've created this autonomous zone, here are some of those who were mocking and protesting police as they were declaring themselves an independent nation.
I can't believe y'all get paid to sit there like f***ing idiots.
Golly, this is beautiful. Wow.
You guys go to clown college for like 26 weeks for those school.
Hairdresser has to go to school for longer than you do.
Oh,
Half of you don't even have a college education to be out here making demands about the people. When you can't even read a f***ing history book and know where you come from. But you want to sit here and tell me that you're educated enough to make demands about you know nothing about. You should know better. You should know better. Traitor to your people. You're like the f***ing black Judas.
Talking to a black police
Selling
officer.
Christ to for f***ing 33 cents today.
Let's start there with Chadwick Moore, columnist for Spectator USA, former editor-at-large of Out Magazine and The Advocate, who has written about bright lights and the quickly abandoning I can't speak English anymore. The abandonment of the city of New York, that is happening remarkably quickly as during COVID-19, Manhattan has lost 25% of its population. It's remarkable. I don't know if CHAZ, the City Hall Autonomous Zone, is going to be a magnet for new people to come to New York. Chadwick, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So what about, how is CHAZ operating? Is this, do you think, going to be a more successful experiment in self-governance than was CHAZ Seattle?
Yeah, this movie seems oddly familiar. I think it was called Occupy Wall Street a couple years ago, and it also ended with a whimper. But I do recall they did the New York Times or someone did a study, and it was during Occupy Wall Street, the average income of the person who was occupying Zuccotti Park was like $200,000 a year.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's probably happening outside City Hall right now. There's a lovely, pleasant people that you just played that clip who are sounded like mocking police officers for not having a Harvard education or something. What nice people! What lovely nice people!
And nothing like being mocked about your education and your fealty to your race by a black, gender-confused individual with no shirt on.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, and being mocked because they're so intelligent about history, and they know it all. They're so smug and competent, and they're fighting for your rights. So you better be thankful.
In your piece in the Spectator, you cite Joan Didion and her observation that New York is a city for the very rich, the very poor, and the very young. That was 50 years ago. Who's New York a city for today?
Increasingly not the young. And I think it'll always be a place for the very rich and the very poor, and the people who are becoming more poor and more taxed into oblivion. Mike Bloomberg, if there was ever a middle class here, it was wiped away under Mike Bloomberg, and people just couldn't afford to live here. He destroyed the middle class in the city. And it's always been a place where, like all big cities, where it's the young people who give it its vibrancy, who come here with sense of adventure and the sense of wonderment, and you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. It's given the city its sort of sense of triumph and character so much, but young people aren't coming to New York anymore, and it almost seems like that will be remembered as a generation of a thing of the past. I mean, number one, they can't afford it. They're bogged down in student loan debt. And also, why would anyone want to come here after everything we've been seeing lately, especially with why would you want to be trapped in this place the next time there's a pandemic or the next time that the riots break out and things start burning down? And also, people just realize they don't need to be in cities anymore. They can work from home. They can, everything happens online. So that the younger generation too, I think, they're way more interested in what's happening online than physically being somewhere.
What Chadwick Moore is writing in Bright Lights, Abandoned City, and by the way, sir, you are an excellent writer, is the death of the city. The death of the city is what you're reading about. And there's a point here where you talk about rural America slept soundly during the George Floyd riots, but if you live in a place like New York and weren't thinking that it might be nice to own a gun right now, as blocks are reduced to rubble, as cops are attacked on the street, then you might be completely insane. That's a truth. That's Chadwick Moore, but that's a truth that I think that's right under the surface, even among the woke white women of the suburbs and, urban areas. Do you see that?
Right. Yeah. I'm sure it's probably similar in Chicago, but it's impossible to get a gun here. I mean, it's virtually impossible, and it's such an insane process. And if you were thinking suddenly, like, the cops are standing down, what's going to happen? I mean, of course, what we've seen with the George Floyd riots is that the sort of gun control debate is now dead for a generation, because who's going to take that seriously now? Because and especially people in big cities where the anti-gun crowd has been very quiet. It's made us realize that you do have to protect yourself. It's made us realize how incredibly fragile our lives are, and our cities especially are extremely fragile. And it just takes a couple of series of crises, and everything begins to crumble around you. And who wants to be in a place like this when that happens?
Yeah, to your point, year-over-year gun sales up 145% June of 2020 versus June of 2019.
I don't want to be your editor. I want to play editor, but I've always wanted to be an advice columnist and an editor at the same time. And so I'll play editor. How about a Chadwick Moore piece on the woke white chicks downloading police scanners and
I wasn't aware of that.
And listening to police scanners and wondering if they can go to the store to get some food, and asking their boyfriends in the pink pea hats if they would accompany them with the little Shih Tzu dog or whatever they have to guard them.
Yeah,
like Tom Wolfe,
like
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
3,000 words, please, by tomorrow. Thank you.
I'll get that right to you.
Chadwick, you're a bit of a cultural maven, so I just wanted to get your comment, because I expect it'll be entertaining, on the Dixie Chicks that are now the Chicks, Lady Antebellum that's now just a Lady and the Tramp. I don't know what they changed their name to. I don't care. And this best of all, David Lee Roth is now just David L. Roth, because he doesn't want David Lee to be...
That's a mutza right there.
To be perceived as a reference to Robert E. Lee. David L. Roth, not David Lee Roth. By the way, as Michael Taub in the Wall Street Journal notes, David Lee is Mr. Roth's given name. It seems implausible that his parents, a Jewish couple from Bloomington, Indiana, had any special affinity for General Robert E. Lee, but Mr. Roth is not joking.
So the name Lee has now been canceled, is what
Correct.
I'm getting here, because maybe there's some association that you're related to Robert E. Lee. Oh, that's wonderful. Good for him. He's still alive, by the way?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well.
And just waiting for the reunion tour. He's got to get check in with Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
But speak to this self-flagellation that's going on, because you're in a milieu, as we are in Chicago, where it is omnipresent.
Oh yeah,
that means it's everywhere.
Almost, it's like a fetish now, isn't it? It's like morphed into this weird kind of almost sexualized culture of. It also speaks to the sort of the religion that is social justice, but it's also the Church of George Floyd, which now becomes that, where it's this kind of penance you have to pay. It's this original sin that we're all born with, and some kind of privilege or a way of oppressing some other group, and you have to flagellate all the time. It's weird and sick, and it just shows how bored and privileged people actually are. These are the things that they're concerning themselves with.
Talking about what's happening on the ground in New York City, as a lot of other major metropolitan areas, as people, as you have businesses shuttered, particularly businesses that add to the vibrancy and the nightlife of a big city like New York, service sector businesses, restaurants, niche hotels, and the like. What is happening as even this week you had Black Lives Matter protesters clashing with police? What is happening with respect to young people? I know you mentioned the very rich and the very poor, and you're not going to have young people coming there as much. But do you have those residents who don't have houses in the Hamptons or Naples fleeing as well, just because, you know what, New York just isn't that interesting anymore? It's not going to be as interesting anymore. The landscape there is going to change.
That's exactly right. And there was, the Millennials really revitalized the cities across the country. New York being a really big example of that. But then it also was sort of, they kind of exported a monoculture of cool across the country. So, you can go to any restaurant in Des Moines or Denver or Brooklyn or whatever and find reasonably comparable things. You don't have to be in New York for the shopping or the fashion. You can do it online. And why would anyone be wasting all the money and time to live here now the safety concerns that we now see, when there's nothing really unique it offers aside from perhaps visually, the visual landscape itself. The cultural products aren't unique. You can get them anywhere. It's been with small businesses and stores. I mean, they've been going extinct for a while. Like small businesses can't stay open in a place like New York. It's too expensive. The storefronts change faster than anything. And now we've seen that just more and more big corporations taking over, and the city has, increasingly just become like a giant Chase Bank branch.
Did I steal that? Yeah, I'm stealing it.
Right, yeah. They changed the spelling of New York City to S-I-T-I, like the bank. So it's
He is Chadwick Moore, columnist for Spectator USA, former editor-at-large of Out Magazine and The Advocate. Chadwick, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And you join us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Is it time to have your sump pump checked? Hi, this is John with Basement Flood Protector. I'm a veteran and the owner. Since 1974, we've manufactured the most reliable and highest quality products and provided unmatched basement waterproofing and sump pump service to the Chicagoland area. Most problems with water in your basement have to do with your sump pump. Maybe it's old, doesn't work properly, or you just need more capacity. Most pumps should be replaced every 3 to 5 years. With our pumps, we recommend replacement every 7 to 10 years. At Basement Flood Protector, we offer a complete line of sump, ejector, and battery backup pumps. Do you really want the hassle and huge expense of restoration? Prevent it and contact us to